Welcome. Thanks for coming over to the Z Files, where today you'll be joining us on a calm tour of the mysterious deep sea at a sleep-friendly pace. We will explore the deepest ocean's greatest mysteries, learn about strange creatures that thrive in conditions once thought uninhabitable, and ponder what this indicates about life that may exist beyond Earth. Part 1. Descent and First Light. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing at the edge of the ocean. The surface glimmers softly in whatever light you picture. Waves rise and fall in their ancient rhythm. Beneath that gentle motion lies something vast and quiet. Something we have barely begun to understand. We are going to descend together into the deepest places on Earth. Not quickly, not with alarm, but slowly and calmly, the way a single flake of marine snow drifts downward through cold water. We will explore the ocean's greatest mysteries. We will meet life that thrives in conditions we once thought impossible. And we will discover that the abyss, far from being empty or lifeless, is among the most remarkable places in our world. The deep ocean begins where sunlight fades. That happens sooner than you might expect. Stand at the surface on a bright day and peer down. The water glows blue or green. But descend just 10 meters and already the red wavelengths of light have been absorbed. Go deeper. At 30 meters, orange is gone. At 100 meters, yellow disappears. By 200 meters, even the brightest surface light has been reduced to a dim twilight glow. And at 1,000 meters, roughly 3,000 feet down, the last trace of sunlight vanishes completely. This boundary, where light ends and darkness begins, is called the aphotic zone. It covers more than 90% of the ocean by volume. It is, quite simply, the largest habitat on Earth. And it is a place of permanent night. But darkness is only one challenge. As you descend, pressure increases steadily. For every 10 meters you sink, the pressure rises by roughly 1 atmosphere. That means at 1,000 meters, the pressure is 100 times what it is at the surface. At the deepest known point, nearly 11,000 meters down in the Mariana Trench, the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. That is more than 8 tons pressing on every square inch. It would crush a human body instantly. It would collapse most submarines. Temperature drops as well. Surface waters might be warm, even tropical. But in the deep ocean, far from the sun's influence, the temperature hovers just above freezing. In many abyssal regions, the water sits at 2 degrees Celsius. It is cold, still, and silent. So we have darkness. We have crushing pressure. We have cold. And yet, life is everywhere. Life has found ways to survive, and even flourish, in these extreme conditions. That is the quiet miracle we are here to explore. Let us begin with light, or rather, with the absence of it. Sunlight cannot reach the deep ocean. Photosynthesis, the process that powers nearly all life at the surface, is impossible here. No plants grow. No algae drift. The deep ocean is cut off from the energy of the sun. And yet, paradoxically, the deep ocean glows. Bioluminescence is the production of light by living organisms. It occurs when a chemical reaction inside a cell releases energy in the form of photons. On land, bioluminescence is rare. Fireflies flash in summer fields. Some fungi glow faintly in forests. But in the deep ocean, bioluminescence is everywhere. Scientists estimate that up to 90% of deep-sea animals produce light in some form. It is, by far, the most common adaptation to life in the abyss. The chemistry is elegant. Most bioluminescent organisms use a molecule called luciferin. When luciferin reacts with oxygen, in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, it releases energy as light. The color of that light depends on the exact structure of the luciferin molecule and the environment inside the cell. Most deep-sea creatures produce blue or green light because those wavelengths travel farthest in seawater. Red light, by contrast, is absorbed almost immediately. But why do they glow? In a world without sunlight, what purpose does light serve? The answers are varied and surprising. Some creatures use light to hunt. The anglerfish, perhaps the most iconic resident of the deep, dangles a glowing lure in front of its mouth. The lure contains bioluminescent bacteria that the fish cultivates in a specialized organ. Prey, drawn to the only light in the darkness, swim closer. And the anglerfish strikes. Other animals use light for camouflage. This seems contradictory. How can glowing help you hide? The answer lies in a technique called counterlumination. Many deep-sea fish and squid have light-producing organs, called photophores, on their undersides. When a predator looks up from below, it would normally see the silhouette of the prey outlined against the faint glow of the surface. But if the prey produces just enough light to match that faint glow, its silhouette disappears. It becomes invisible. Some creatures use light to communicate. Certain species of squid produce complex patterns of flashing lights across their bodies, possibly to signal mates or warn rivals. Deep-sea shrimp release glowing clouds when threatened, startling predators and allowing the shrimp to escape into the darkness. And some fish have evolved light organs near their eyes, essentially biological flashlights, which they use to illuminate their surroundings or to see prey. There is something haunting about this. Imagine the deep ocean as a vast, dark theater, and scattered throughout, tiny points of cold light flicker on and off. A brief glow here, a pulse of blue there. Messages sent and received in a language of light we are only beginning to understand. One of the strangest examples of bioluminescence belongs to a creature called the vampire squid. Despite its name, it is not a true squid, nor is it a vampire. It is a small, gelatinous cephalopod that drifts in the oxygen minimum zones of the deep ocean, regions where oxygen levels are so low that few other animals can survive. When threatened, the vampire squid does not flee. Instead, it turns itself inside out, wrapping its arms over its body like a cloak. The undersides of its arms are covered with fleshy spines and bioluminescent organs. The squid pulses with light, creating a glowing, spiny ball. Most predators, confronted with this bizarre display, retreat. The vampire squid then slowly unfurls and drifts away. It is a defense born of stillness and patience. It is survival by spectacle. Bioluminescence also plays a role in one of the ocean's most important ecological processes, the vertical migration. Every night, across the world's oceans, billions of small animals rise from the deep toward the surface. They come to feed on plankton and organic matter that drifts in the upper layers. And every morning, before the sun rises, they descend again into the safety of the dark. This migration involves more biomass than any other movement of animals on Earth. The creatures involved, tiny crustaceans called copepods, small fish, jellyfish, and squid, often number in the trillions. And many of them glow. Their bioluminescence can be detected from space, a diffuse glow rising from the ocean at night like breath. Why do they migrate? The surface offers food, but it also offers danger. In daylight, predators can see easily, so these animals hide in the deep during the day, where darkness protects them. At night, they venture upward under cover of darkness to feed. It is a daily journey of hundreds of meters, repeated every single day, by creatures no larger than a grain of rice. This migration also transfers nutrients. The animals feed at the surface and excrete waste in the deep. They die and sink. They are eaten and their remains fall. In this way, carbon and nutrients are carried from the sunlit surface into the abyss. This process, known as the biological pump, plays a critical role in regulating Earth's climate by sequestering carbon in the deep ocean. So even in the farthest, darkest reaches, the ocean is connected to the surface. Life there is not isolated. It is part of a planetary system. Let us pause here for a moment. Let the idea settle. The deep ocean, though dark and distant, is tied to the air we breathe and the climate we live in. It is not separate from us. It is part of the same fragile system. Now we continue our descent, moving deeper still, toward the very floor of the ocean. Part 2. Life without sunlight. We have descended through the twilight zone, where the last traces of sunlight fade into blue darkness. We have passed through the midnight zone, where bioluminescence becomes the only light. Now we approach the abyssal zone, the true floor of the ocean, between 4,000 and 6,000 meters deep. Here, the pressure is immense. The water is near freezing, and the darkness is absolute. For most of human history, scientists believed the deep ocean was lifeless. It seemed reasonable. Without sunlight, there could be no photosynthesis. Without photosynthesis, there could be no plants. Without plants, there could be no herbivores. Without herbivores, no predators. The logic seemed airtight. The abyss, they thought, was a biological desert. But they were wrong. Profoundly, wonderfully wrong. The first hint came in the 1870s, during the Challenger expedition, one of the first scientific voyages dedicated to exploring the deep sea. The crew dredged the ocean floor and brought up strange creatures from depths exceeding 4,000 meters. There were brittle stars, sea cucumbers, and bizarre fish. Life, it turned out, existed in the abyss. But how did it survive? The answer lies in a process called chemosynthesis. It is one of the most important discoveries in biology, and it fundamentally changed our understanding of where and how life can exist. Photosynthesis uses sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugar and oxygen. It is the foundation of almost all life on the surface. But chemosynthesis does not require sunlight. Instead, it uses chemical energy. Certain bacteria can extract energy from molecules like hydrogen sulfide or methane. They combine these chemicals with carbon dioxide to produce organic matter. And this process, remarkably, can support entire ecosystems. The discovery of chemosynthesis happened in 1977, in a place called the Galapagos Rift. A team of scientists was exploring the seafloor using a deep-diving submersible called Alvin. They were searching for hydrothermal vents, cracks in the ocean floor where heated water escapes from beneath the Earth's crust. Geologists knew these vents existed, but no one expected what the scientists found. Around the vents, clustered in dense colonies, were giant tube worms, some nearly 2 meters long. There were white crabs, pale shrimp, and clams the size of dinner plates. The scientists were astonished. They had discovered an entire ecosystem thriving in total darkness, at crushing pressures, in water so hot it would boil at the surface. How was this possible? The answer lay in the bacteria. The hydrothermal vents release water rich in hydrogen sulfide, a toxic compound that smells like rotten eggs. Most animals cannot tolerate it, but certain bacteria thrive on it. These bacteria use the hydrogen sulfide as an energy source, performing chemosynthesis. They produce organic matter, and other organisms feed on them. The giant tube worms, for example, have no mouth and no digestive system. Instead, they harbor chemosynthetic bacteria inside their bodies, in a specialized organ called a trophosome. The worms absorb hydrogen sulfide from the vent water and deliver it to the bacteria. The bacteria produce nutrients, and the worms absorb those nutrients directly. It is a partnership, a symbiosis, between two completely different forms of life. This discovery had profound implications. It meant that life did not require sunlight. It did not require photosynthesis. Life could exist, and even flourish, using only the chemical energy of the Earth itself. Hydrothermal vents are scattered across the ocean floor, wherever tectonic activity allows heated water to escape. The vents come in different forms. Some, called black smokers, release dark plumes of mineral-rich water that looks like smoke. The minerals precipitate out of the water and build tall chimneys, some rising tens of meters above the seafloor. These chimneys can reach temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius at the vent opening. Yet just centimeters away, the surrounding water remains near freezing. Other vents, called white smokers, release cooler water rich in different minerals. And some vents are diffuse, seeping gently rather than erupting. Each type supports different communities of life. The organisms at these vents are among the most extreme on Earth. Some bacteria can survive temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Celsius. These are called hyperthermophiles. They live at the very edge of what we consider biochemically possible. Their enzymes and proteins are stable at temperatures that would denature the molecules in most other life forms. There are also cold seeps, places where methane or hydrogen sulfide leaks slowly from the seafloor. Cold seeps do not have the dramatic temperatures of hydrothermal vents, but they support similar ecosystems. Chemosynthetic bacteria form the base of the food web. Tube worms, clams, and mussels colonize the area. Crabs and fish come to feed. And all of it depends on chemistry, not sunlight. The existence of these ecosystems raises an important question. If life can thrive in the deep ocean using only chemical energy, could life exist in similar environments elsewhere? Not just on Earth, but on other worlds. Consider Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Beneath its icy surface lies a vast ocean, kept liquid by tidal heating from Jupiter's gravity. That ocean is dark. It is cold. But it likely contains hydrothermal vents, places where heat and chemicals escape from Europa's rocky core. Could life exist there? We do not know. But the organisms at Earth's hydrothermal vents show us that it is possible. Or consider Enceladus, a small moon of Saturn. Geysers of water erupt from cracks in its surface, spraying ice and organic molecules into space. These geysers originate from an ocean beneath the ice. And that ocean, too, may have hydrothermal activity. Could there be microbial life in the ocean of Enceladus? Again, we do not know. But the discovery of chemosynthesis gives us a framework for thinking about life beyond Earth. The deep ocean teaches us that life is more adaptable than we imagined. It shows us that habitable environments are not limited to places like Earth's surface. And it suggests that the search for life elsewhere should focus not only on planets with sunlight, but on worlds with liquid water and chemical energy. This is a profound shift in perspective. It widens the possibilities. It invites us to imagine life in places we once thought impossible. But let us return to Earth for now. Let us explore the creatures that inhabit these dark, pressurized depths. Pressure, as we have said, increases with depth. At the surface, the pressure is 1 atmosphere. At 1,000 meters, it is 100 atmospheres. At 6,000 meters, it is 600 atmospheres. And at the deepest point, nearly 11,000 meters down, the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. For organisms with gas-filled spaces, such as lungs or swim bladders, this pressure would be catastrophic. The gas would compress until the organism collapsed. But most deep-sea animals do not have gas-filled spaces. Their bodies are made mostly of water, and water is nearly incompressible. So the pressure inside their bodies equals the pressure outside. They are in equilibrium. The pressure does not crush them. Still, pressure affects biochemistry. Proteins must fold correctly to function. Membranes must remain fluid. At high pressures, these processes can be disrupted. So deep-sea organisms have evolved special adaptations. Their proteins have unique structures that remain stable under pressure. Their cell membranes contain different lipids, types of organic compound, that stay flexible even in cold, pressurized water. Some deep-sea fish have soft, gelatinous bodies. They lack heavy bones and dense muscles. This reduces their metabolic needs and makes them more neutrally buoyant. They drift slowly through the water, conserving energy. Energy conservation is critical in the deep ocean. Food is scarce. Most of the organic matter sinking from the surface is consumed before it reaches the abyss. What does arrive is sparse and unpredictable. So many deep-sea animals have slow metabolisms. They move little. They reproduce infrequently. They live long lives, growing slowly over decades or even centuries. Some deep-sea fish have enormous mouths and expandable stomachs. When they encounter prey, which may happen only rarely, they can swallow animals larger than themselves. They store the meal and digest it slowly over weeks or months. Survival in the abyss often depends on taking advantage of every opportunity, no matter how infrequent. There is a strange phenomenon called deep-sea gigantism. Many deep-sea invertebrates grow far larger than their shallow water relatives. Giant isopods, related to pillbugs, can reach lengths of 40 centimeters. Giant amphipods, related to tiny beach hoppers, can grow to nearly 30 centimeters. Giant squid, the largest invertebrates on Earth, can reach lengths exceeding 10 meters. The reasons for this gigantism are debated. Some scientists suggest that the cold water and slow metabolism allow for longer lifespans and thus more time to grow. Others propose that larger bodies help retain heat or provide advantages in finding mates in the vast, dark expanse. There are also examples of dwarfism. Some deep-sea species are tiny, far smaller than their shallow water relatives. Size, it seems, is flexible in the deep. Evolution finds different solutions depending on the specific challenges of each niche. One of the most remarkable adaptations involves eyes. In the deep ocean, eyes are both useless and essential. Useless because there is no sunlight. Essential because of bioluminescence. Some deep-sea fish have enormous eyes, designed to capture even the faintest glow from a passing organism. Others have tubular eyes, which point upward to detect silhouettes against the faint light from above. And some have lost their eyes entirely, relying on other senses. The barrel-eye fish is a particularly strange example. Its eyes are tubular and point upward, encased inside a transparent dome on top of its head. The fish can see through the top of its own skull. It drifts in the water column, watching for the bioluminescent glow of prey above it. When it detects something, it rotates its eyes forward and swims upward to intercept. It is an alien solution to an alien problem. Many deep-sea animals are blind but highly sensitive to vibrations and chemicals. They have lateral lines, sensory organs that detect movement in the water. They have sensitive chemoreceptors that can detect the faint odor of a dead animal from kilometers away. In the deep ocean, survival often depends on sensing, not seeing. The organisms of the deep are not separate from us. They are part of the same tree of life. They share the same basic biochemistry, the same genetic code. And yet, they live in a world so different from ours that they seem almost extraterrestrial. But this, too, is a lesson. Life adapts. Life persists. And life, wherever it exists, finds a way. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the darkness settle around us. Let the quiet wonder of these discoveries sink in softly. In the next part, we will explore the geology of the deep, the slow sculpting of the ocean floor by forces we cannot see. Part 3. The Sculpted Abyss. We have explored the creatures of the deep, their adaptations, and their strange beauty. Now let us turn our attention to the stage on which they live. The seafloor itself. The geology of the abyss. When we imagine the ocean floor, we might picture a flat, featureless plain stretching endlessly in all directions. And in some places, that image is nearly correct. But the reality is far more varied. The deep ocean contains mountains taller than Everest. It contains canyons deeper than the Grand Canyon. It contains volcanoes, ridges, trenches, and vast plateaus. It is a landscape as complex and dramatic as any on land. We simply cannot see it from the surface. The abyssal plains are the closest thing to flat surfaces on Earth. They cover roughly 40% of the planet's surface, making them the most common landscape anywhere. They lie between 4,000 and 6,000 meters deep, buried beneath layers of sediment that have accumulated over millions of years. This sediment falls slowly from above. Dead plankton. Dust blown from continents. Tiny fragments of shell and bone. All of it drifts downward through the water column, settling gently on the seafloor. The process is so slow that sediment accumulates at a rate of just 1 centimeter per 1,000 years in some regions. In others, where ocean currents are stronger or biological productivity is higher, the rate might reach a few centimeters per 1,000 years. But even at the fastest rates, it is a process of geological patience. The sediment forms a soft, fine mud called ooze. There are different types. Calcareous ooze is made mostly of calcium carbonate from the shells of tiny organisms. Silicious ooze is made of silica from diatoms and radiolarians. And in the deepest parts of the ocean, where even these materials dissolve under pressure, there is red clay, the finest sediment of all, composed of dust and volcanic ash. To walk on the abyssal plain, if you could, would be to walk on one of the quietest places imaginable. The sediment is soft and undisturbed. Tracks left by animals remain visible for years, sometimes decades. The water is still. The current moves so slowly that it barely qualifies as movement. And yet, even here, life persists. Small worms burrow through the mud. Sea cucumbers crawl across the surface, feeding on organic particles. Bacteria thrive in the sediment, breaking down what little food arrives. But the abyssal plains are not the whole story. Rising from these plains are mid-ocean ridges, underwater mountain ranges that circle the globe like seams on a baseball. They stretch for more than 60,000 kilometers, making them the longest mountain range on Earth. And they are the birthplace of the ocean floor. At mid-ocean ridges, tectonic plates pull apart. Magma rises from the mantle to fill the gap. It cools and solidifies, forming new oceanic crust. This process is called seafloor spreading. It happens continuously, though slowly, at rates of a few centimeters per year. Over millions of years, this spreading creates new ocean floor and pushes the continents apart. The ridges themselves are dramatic features. They rise 2 to 3 kilometers above the surrounding plains. Their central valleys are fractured and volcanic. And along these valleys, hydrothermal vents release heated water, supporting the chemosynthetic ecosystems we explored earlier. The discovery of mid-ocean ridges and seafloor spreading revolutionized geology. It confirmed the theory of plate tectonics, the idea that Earth's surface is divided into moving plates. It explained why the ocean floor is so young, geologically speaking. The oldest oceanic crust is only about 200 million years old, a fraction of Earth's age. The crust is constantly being created at ridges and destroyed at subduction zones, where it sinks back into the mantle. Subduction zones create the deepest places on Earth, ocean trenches. These are long, narrow depressions where one tectonic plate dives beneath another. The Mariana Trench, the deepest known point, reaches nearly 11,000 meters below sea level. To put that in perspective, if you placed Mount Everest at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, its peak would still be more than 2 kilometers underwater. Trenches are places of slow, immense violence. The descending plate grinds against the overriding plate, generating earthquakes. Some of the most powerful earthquakes in recorded history have occurred at subduction zones. And as the plate descends, it carries water and sediment into the mantle, influencing volcanism and the chemistry of the deep Earth. The trenches are also, surprisingly, inhabited. In 2012, filmmaker James Cameron descended to the bottom of the Mariana Trench in a submersible called Deep Sea Challenger. He spent several hours on the seafloor, collecting samples and recording video. The water was clear. The sediment was fine and pale. And there was life. Small amphipods. Bacterial mats. Even fish have been observed at depths exceeding 8,000 meters, in trenches around the world. These fish, called snailfish, hold the record for the deepest living vertebrate. They are small, translucent, and soft-bodied. They lack swim bladders. Their bones are thin and flexible, and they thrive in conditions that would destroy most other animals. How they manage this is still being studied, but it appears their cells contain specialized molecules that stabilize proteins under extreme pressure. The existence of life in the trenches tells us something important. There is no place on Earth, no matter how extreme, where life has not found a way to exist. Life is tenacious. Life is creative. and life fills every available niche. Beyond ridges and trenches, there are seamounts, underwater mountains that rise from the seafloor but do not reach the surface. There are tens of thousands of seamounts scattered across the ocean. Some are extinct volcanoes. Others are still active. Many serve as oases for deep-sea life. Currents flowing over seamounts bring nutrients upward, creating localized zones of higher productivity. Fish gather, corals grow, and predators come to feed. Deep-sea corals are another revelation. Most people associate corals with warm, shallow tropical reefs. But there are also cold-water corals that grow in the deep ocean, at depths exceeding 1,000 meters. These corals do not rely on symbiotic algae like their shallow water cousins. Instead, they capture food from the water. They grow slowly, sometimes less than a millimeter per year, but they can live for centuries. Some deep-sea coral colonies are thousands of years old, among the oldest living organisms on Earth. These corals build complex three-dimensional structures that provide habitat for countless other species. Fish, crustaceans, and invertebrates shelter among the coral branches. The corals create biodiversity hotspots in otherwise barren regions. And yet, they are fragile. Bottom trawling, a fishing method that drags heavy nets across the seafloor, can destroy coral colonies in seconds. Colonies that took millennia to grow. There are also underwater canyons, carved by ancient rivers when sea levels were lower, or by underwater landslides and turbidity currents. These canyons channel sediment and organic matter from shallow water into the deep, creating pathways for nutrients and occasionally for animals. The geology of the deep ocean is not static. It is dynamic, shaped by tectonic forces, volcanic activity, and the slow accumulation of sediment. It is a landscape in constant, imperceptible motion, and it is interconnected with the surface world in ways we are only beginning to understand. Underwater landslides can trigger tsunamis. Volcanic eruptions on the seafloor can release gases and minerals that affect ocean chemistry. And the slow stirring of deep ocean currents, driven by temperature and salinity differences, redistributes heat around the planet, influencing climate on a global scale. These currents, known as thermohaline circulation, form a global conveyor belt. Cold, dense water sinks near the poles and flows along the ocean floor toward the equator. Warmer water flows back along the surface. The entire cycle takes roughly 1,000 years to complete. It is slow, patient, and essential. It regulates Earth's climate. It transports nutrients. And it connects every ocean basin into a single, unified system. So the deep ocean is not isolated. It is part of the same planetary machinery that drives weather, climate, and life itself. Let us pause here and breathe. Let the scale of these processes settle gently in your mind. Part 4: Whispers and Mysteries. We have descended through layers of water and time. We have met strange creatures and explored alien landscapes. But the deep ocean still holds mysteries. Sounds we cannot explain. Observations that puzzle scientists. Phenomena that remind us how much we have yet to learn. Sound travels differently in water than in air. In air, sound moves at about 340 meters per second. In water, it travels more than 4 times faster, at roughly 1,500 meters per second. And in the ocean, sound can travel for enormous distances, especially in a layer called the SOFAR channel, or sound fixing and ranging channel. The SOFAR channel exists at depths of around 1,000 meters, where temperature and pressure create conditions that trap sound waves. A sound produced in this channel can travel horizontally for thousands of kilometers with minimal loss. Whales use this channel to communicate across ocean basins, and humans use it to monitor underwater activity. But the ocean also produces sounds we do not fully understand. In 1997, underwater microphones in the Pacific Ocean detected an extremely loud, ultra-low frequency sound. It rose rapidly in frequency over about 1 minute, then faded. The sound was so loud it was detected by sensors more than 5,000 kilometers apart. Researchers called it the bloop. For years, the origin of the bloop was a mystery. Some speculated it might be an unknown marine animal, perhaps a giant squid or some undiscovered creature. Others suggested it could be geological, perhaps ice or underwater volcanic activity. Eventually, scientists determined that the bloop was most likely caused by an icequake, a fracturing of ice shelves in Antarctica. The sound matched the profile of ice cracking and carving into the ocean. But the bloop captured imaginations because it reminded us how little we know. The ocean is full of sounds. Crackling from snapping shrimp, clicks and whistles from dolphins, songs from whales, rumbles from earthquakes, and many sounds we cannot identify. There is a sound called the upsweep, a continuous series of narrowband upsweeping tones that has been detected since the early 1990s. It is seasonal, most prominent in spring and fall. Its source remains unknown, though some scientists believe it may be related to volcanic or hydrothermal activity. There is the whistle, a brief high-frequency sound of unknown origin. There is the slow down, a long descending frequency that lasted about 7 minutes. And there are countless other sounds recorded by hydrophones around the world, many of which remain unexplained. Why do these mysteries persist? Partly because the ocean is vast. Partly because monitoring the entire ocean continuously is impossible. And partly because sound in water is complex. It refracts and reflects. It is distorted by temperature gradients and ocean currents. Determining the exact source of a distant sound is difficult, even with multiple sensors. But these mysteries are reminders. The ocean is not fully known. It is not fully mapped. And it still holds surprises. Consider the discovery of deep-sea animals that glow red. Most deep-sea bioluminescence is blue or green, as we discussed earlier. Red light is absorbed quickly by seawater, making it seemingly useless. But some deep-sea fish produce red bioluminescence. And some have evolved red-sensitive vision. Why would this be advantageous? Because most deep-sea animals cannot see red light. A fish that produces red light and can see red effectively has a private communication channel. It can illuminate prey without the prey knowing. It can signal to others of its own species without alerting predators. It is a secret wavelength in the dark. This adaptation was unexpected. It shows that evolution is endlessly inventive. And it suggests that there may be other sensory channels in the deep ocean that we have not yet discovered. Another mystery involves migration patterns. We know about the daily vertical migration of zooplankton and small fish. But some larger animals migrate vertically as well, and we do not fully understand why. Certain species of jellyfish, for example, rise and fall in the water column on cycles that do not match the day-night rhythm. Some appear to follow lunar cycles. Others seem to respond to currents or food availability in ways we cannot predict. And then there are the deep scattering layers. These are dense concentrations of organisms, mostly small fish and zooplankton, that appear on sonar as distinct layers in the water column. The layers rise at night and descend during the day, following the vertical migration pattern. But their exact composition and behavior vary by region and season. And in some areas, the layers split or merge in ways that puzzle researchers. There are also physical mysteries. Strange sediment patterns on the abyssal plains. Circular depressions that may be caused by gas seeps or by the feeding activity of organisms. Tracks and trails that suggest behaviors we have not directly observed. In some regions, the seafloor is covered with nodules, small potato-shaped rocks rich in manganese and other metals. These nodules form slowly, growing at rates of a few millimeters per million years. They sit on the surface of the sediment, undisturbed for eons. How they remain on the surface, rather than being buried by sediment, is not entirely clear. Some scientists suggest that burrowing organisms inadvertently push them upward. Others propose that bottom currents prevent sediment from accumulating around them. These nodules have become a subject of interest and concern. They contain valuable metals, including manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt. As demand for these metals increases, driven by technologies like batteries and electronics, companies have proposed mining the deep seafloor for nodules. But deep-sea mining would be destructive. The nodules provide habitat. Organisms attached to them. They alter the local chemistry and texture of the seafloor. Removing them would strip away that habitat. And the sediment disturbed by mining equipment would create plumes that drift for kilometers, smothering life far from the mining site. The deep ocean recovers slowly from disturbance. A trawl scar on the seafloor can remain visible for decades. The slow growth and long lifespans of deep-sea organisms mean that populations take centuries to recover from damage. And because we understand so little about deep-sea ecosystems, we cannot predict the full consequences of mining. There is also the question of climate change. The deep ocean absorbs heat and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, buffering some of the effects of global warming. But this absorption has consequences. As the ocean warms, even slightly, it affects the distribution of species, the behavior of currents, and the chemistry of seawater. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of carbon dioxide, lowers the pH of seawater. This affects organisms that build shells or skeletons from calcium carbonate, including corals, mollusks, and some plankton. In the deep ocean, where pressure naturally lowers pH, acidification could push conditions beyond the tolerance of some species. And warming affects oxygen levels. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen than cold water. In regions where oxygen is already low, such as oxygen minimum zones, further warming could expand these zones, reducing the habitat available for most marine life. These changes are slow, but they are happening, and they will shape the future of the deep ocean in ways we are only beginning to anticipate. Yet even in the face of these challenges, there is hope. The deep ocean is resilient. Life has persisted through ice ages and warm periods, through asteroid impacts and mass extinctions. It has adapted to changing conditions again and again over billions of years. And humanity is beginning to recognize the value of the deep ocean. Marine protected areas are being established in some regions, prohibiting fishing and mining. International agreements are being negotiated to govern activities in international waters. And scientists are working to map and understand the deep ocean before it is irreversibly altered. There is still so much to discover. New species are found on nearly every deep-sea expedition. New behaviors are observed. New ecosystems are revealed. The ocean keeps its secrets, but it also offers them, slowly, to those patient enough to listen. So we descend a little deeper, curious and humble, aware that we are visitors in a world far older and stranger than our own. In the next part, we will meet more of the remarkable creatures that call the abyss home, and we will explore their strategies for survival in this demanding environment. Part 5. Survivors of the Abyss. We have journeyed far into the deep. We have learned about light, pressure, and the geology of the seafloor. Now let us turn our attention back to the living world, to the remarkable creatures that have evolved not merely to tolerate the abyss, but to thrive in it. Survival in the deep ocean requires patience. Food arrives unpredictably. Encounters with mates are rare. Energy must be conserved. And yet, life has found countless ways to meet these challenges. Each adaptation is a small marvel, a solution refined over millions of years. Consider the gulper eel, also called the pelican eel. It is a long, slender fish with an enormous mouth that can open wide enough to swallow prey larger than itself. Its jaw is loosely hinged, allowing it to expand like a pelican's pouch. The eel drifts through the water column with its mouth open, waiting for something to swim inside. When prey enters, the mouth snaps shut. The eel's stomach stretches to accommodate the meal. This is sit-and-wait predation taken to an extreme. The gulper eel expends almost no energy hunting. It simply positions itself and waits. In an environment where food is scarce, this strategy makes sense. Movement costs energy. Patience costs nothing. Another master of patience is the tripod fish. It lives on the abyssal plain, perched on 3 elongated fin rays that extend from its body like stilts. The fish stands motionless on the seafloor, facing into the current. Its other fins are modified into long, sensitive filaments that extend forward and upward, detecting vibrations from passing prey. When something touches the filaments, the fish strikes. The tripod fish can remain in this position for hours, possibly days. It is essentially a living trap. And because it is not swimming, not searching, it uses very little energy. It waits in the darkness, sensing the faintest movements in the water. Many deep-sea fish have reduced skeletons and weak muscles. They are fragile and soft. This is not a weakness but an adaptation. Heavy bones and dense muscles require energy to maintain and to move. In the deep ocean, where every calorie matters, reducing unnecessary mass is advantageous. These fish are neutrally buoyant, drifting with minimal effort. They are shapes in the water, quiet and efficient. Some deep-sea animals have evolved transparent bodies. Certain jellyfish, squid, and even some fish are nearly invisible. Their tissues are clear, allowing light to pass through them without scattering. This makes them difficult for predators to see, even with bioluminescent illumination. Transparency is a form of camouflage in a world where bioluminescence is common. But transparency has limits. Organs like eyes and digestive tracts are difficult to make transparent. Some transparent animals have small, reduced eyes. Others position their organs in ways that minimize their visibility. And some species are only partially transparent, with just enough clarity to confuse predators in the dim light. Then there is the fang-tooth fish. It has the largest teeth relative to body size of any fish. Its fangs are so long that when its mouth closes, The teeth fit into special sockets in the roof of its mouth and on either side of its brain. The fangtooth is small, rarely exceeding 15 centimeters in length, but it is a fierce predator. It feeds on other fish and crustaceans, using its teeth to grip struggling prey. The fangtooth has an unusual life cycle. Juveniles live in shallower water and look completely different from adults. They are pale, with long spines extending from their heads. As they mature, they descend into deeper water and gradually transform into the dark, fang-toothed adults. This separation of juvenile and adult habitats reduces competition for food within the species. There are also deep-sea octopuses, quite different from their shallow water relatives. Dumbo octopuses, named for their ear-like fins that resemble the Disney character, are among the deepest living octopuses. They have soft, gelatinous bodies and small fins on either side of their head that they flap to move through the water. They hover above the seafloor, searching for small invertebrates buried in the sediment. Dumbo octopuses do not have an ink sac, unlike most other octopuses. Ink is a defensive tool used to create a dark cloud that confuses predators. But in the deep ocean, where there is no light, ink is useless. So these octopuses have lost that adaptation. Evolution removes what is not needed. Some deep-sea creatures have developed extreme longevity. The Greenland shark, which spends much of its time in deep, cold waters, is the longest-lived vertebrate known. Radiocarbon dating of eye lens tissue suggests that some individuals may live for 400 years or more. They grow slowly, reproduce late in life, and move through the water with an unhurried grace. Longevity in the deep ocean may be linked to the cold temperatures and slow metabolism we have discussed. But it also reflects the stability of the environment. There are no seasons in the abyss. No storms. No droughts. The conditions change slowly, if at all. And in such an environment, long lifespans become possible. Another remarkable adaptation involves the giant larvaceans. These are small, tadpole-like creatures related to sea squirts. They live inside elaborate mucus structures called houses, which they build around themselves. The houses are intricate filters, capturing particles from the water. The larvacean feeds on these particles, then discards the house and builds a new one. This process can happen several times a day. The discarded houses drift slowly downward, carrying trapped particles with them. They become packages of food descending through the water column. Other animals feed on them. And when they reach the seafloor, they deliver organic matter to the sediment. Giant larvaceans, though small, play an outsized role in transporting carbon to the deep ocean. There are also bone-eating worms, called oosdacs. These worms live on the bones of dead whales that have sunk to the seafloor. They do not have mouths. Instead, they use root-like structures to penetrate the bone. Inside their bodies, they harbor bacteria that digest the fats and proteins in the bone. The worms absorb the nutrients produced by the bacteria. A whale fall, the carcass of a dead whale on the seafloor, is a bonanza of food in the deep ocean. It can support a community of organisms for years or even decades. First come scavengers, sharks and hagfish, that strip away the soft tissue. Then come invertebrates that eat what remains. And finally, organisms like oosdacs colonize the bones themselves, extracting the last traces of energy. Whale falls create oases of life on the abyssal plain. They are stepping stones, allowing species to disperse across vast distances. And they provide a rare concentration of resources in an otherwise barren landscape. The deep ocean is also home to some of the strangest reproductive strategies. In many deep-sea anglerfish species, males are tiny compared to females. When a male finds a female, he bites onto her body and fuses with her permanently. His tissues merge with hers. He loses his eyes, most of his internal organs, and becomes a parasite, sustained by her blood. He provides sperm whenever she is ready to reproduce. This bizarre arrangement makes sense in the deep ocean. Finding a mate in the vast, dark expanse is difficult. By fusing with a female, the male ensures that he will always be available when reproduction occurs. And the female gains a permanent source of sperm without having to search for a mate each breeding season. There are deep-sea creatures that glow continuously, and others that produce flashes only when disturbed. There are animals that hunt alone, and others that gather in swarms. There are filter feeders, scavengers, predators, and parasites. The diversity of strategies is immense, and there are still species being discovered. In 2015, researchers exploring the Mariana Trench discovered a new species of snailfish at a depth of more than 8,000 meters. It was pale, translucent, and appeared almost ghostly in the video footage. It represents the deepest known fish, living at the very edge of where vertebrates can survive. Why is there a depth limit for fish? The answer lies in a molecule called trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO. This molecule helps stabilize proteins under high pressure. Fish produce more TMAO as they live deeper. But there is a limit to how much TMAO can be produced. Beyond about 8,500 meters, the concentration needed would exceed what is biochemically possible. So fish, as we know them, cannot live deeper than that. But other organisms can. Invertebrates like amphipods and sea cucumbers have been found at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench. They use different biochemical strategies that do not rely as heavily on TMAO. So the limit for fish is not the limit for all life. This reminds us that life's boundaries are defined by chemistry and physics, but also by evolution's creativity. Different lineages find different solutions. And the deep ocean, with its extreme conditions, showcases the range of those solutions. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the strangeness and beauty of these adaptations settle softly in your thoughts. Part 6. Into the Hadal Zone. We have descended through the abyssal zone, the vast plains that cover much of the deep seafloor. But there is deeper still to go. Below 6,000 meters lies the Hadal Zone, named for Hades, the ancient Greek underworld. This is the realm of the ocean trenches, the deepest places on Earth. The Hadal Zone is not a continuous habitat. It exists only in trenches, long narrow valleys created by the collision of tectonic plates. There are about 30 major trenches scattered around the Pacific Ocean and a few in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Together, they represent less than 2% of the ocean floor by area. But they plunge to extraordinary depths. The Mariana Trench, located in the Western Pacific, is the deepest. Its lowest point, called Challenger Deep, reaches 10,984 meters below the surface. That is nearly 11 kilometers. It is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. The pressure there exceeds 1,000 atmospheres, or roughly 16,000 pounds per square inch. Until recently, scientists believed the Hadal Zone was largely barren. The extreme pressure, the cold, and the scarcity of food seemed insurmountable. But expeditions over the past few decades have revealed that the trenches are far from empty. They host unique ecosystems, with species found nowhere else on Earth. Why is there life in the trenches? Partly because food does reach them. The trenches act as funnels, channeling sediment and organic matter that would otherwise spread across the abyssal plains. Currents and underwater landslides carry material into the trenches, where it accumulates. This creates localized concentrations of food, enough to support populations of scavengers and deposit feeders. The animals of the Hadal zone are specially adapted to the crushing pressure. Most are invertebrates. Amphipods, shrimp-like crustaceans, are particularly common. Some Hadal amphipods grow quite large, reaching lengths of 30 centimeters or more. They are scavengers, feeding on whatever organic matter drifts down from above. When researchers deploy baited cameras in the trenches, amphipods often swarm around the bait within hours, appearing in the thousands. These amphipods have remarkable adaptations. Their cells are packed with compounds that counteract the effects of pressure on proteins and membranes. They can move quickly despite the extreme conditions. And they can tolerate the cold, near freezing water. There are also Hadal snailfish, as we mentioned earlier. These fish are soft-bodied and pale, with few bones and reduced eyes. They feed on small invertebrates. And they represent the deepest living vertebrates, surviving at depths where most fish would be crushed. Sea cucumbers crawl along the trench floors, feeding on sediment. Some species are found only in Hadal environments. They move slowly, processing the mud and extracting whatever nutrients it contains. They are among the most abundant large animals in the trenches. The Hadal zone is also geologically active. Many trenches are associated with subduction zones, where earthquakes are common. Some trenches have hydrothermal vents, releasing heated water and chemicals that support chemosynthetic ecosystems. These Hadal vents are less studied than those on mid-ocean ridges, but early observations suggest they host unique communities of organisms. Exploration of the Hadal zone is difficult. Only a handful of submersibles can reach such depths. The pressure requires extraordinarily strong materials. The cost is high, and the risks are significant. A failure at that depth would be catastrophic. The first humans to reach the Hadal zone were Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh. In 1960, they descended to Challenger Deep in a submersible called the Trieste. They spent about 20 minutes at the bottom, observing through a small porthole. They reported seeing a flatfish and some shrimp. The visibility was poor, and they had limited time. But they proved that humans could reach the deepest place on Earth and return safely. It would be more than 50 years before anyone returned. In 2012, James Cameron made a solo dive to Challenger Deep in the Deep Sea Challenger. He spent several hours on the seafloor, collecting samples and recording high-definition video. His observations confirmed that life exists even at the very bottom. Since then, a few other explorers and researchers have made similar dives, gradually expanding our understanding of this remote environment. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, and autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, have also explored the trenches. These robotic systems can stay down longer and carry more instruments than human-occupied submersibles. They collect samples, record video, and measure environmental conditions. And they are revealing that the Hadal zone is more diverse and more active than previously imagined. But these expeditions are expensive and infrequent. Most of the Hadal zone remains unexplored. We have visited only a tiny fraction of the trenches. And each new expedition discovers species never seen before. One of the surprises from Hadal exploration is the discovery of plastic pollution. In 2018, researchers found plastic fragments in the digestive systems of amphipods collected from the Mariana Trench. Even the most remote place on Earth has been touched by human activity. Plastic waste, carried by currents and sinking through the water column, accumulates in the trenches just as sediment does. This is a sobering reminder. The ocean is not separate from human society. What we discard finds its way, eventually, into the deepest places. And because the Hadal zone is isolated and slow to recover, pollution there persists far longer than it would in more dynamic environments. There are also concerns about deep-sea mining in Hadal regions. Some trenches contain mineral deposits, and as shallow resources become depleted, interest in deep-sea mining grows. But extracting those minerals would disturb fragile ecosystems that we barely understand. And the consequences could be irreversible. The Hadal zone also offers insights into life's limits. How deep can life exist? We do not yet know. Microbial life has been found in sediments deep beneath the seafloor, living in the crust itself. These microbes survive at high pressures and temperatures, using chemical energy from rock-water interactions. They grow and reproduce incredibly slowly, perhaps dividing once every 1,000 years. But they are alive. Could microbial life exist even deeper? Perhaps in the mantle, or in subterranean oceans on other worlds. The organisms of the Hadal zone and the deep biosphere suggest that life's boundaries are broader than we once believed. This brings us back to the question of life beyond Earth. The conditions in the Hadal zone, extreme pressure, darkness, cold, and reliance on chemical rather than solar energy, are similar to conditions that might exist in subsurface oceans on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. On Europa, beneath an ice shell perhaps 10 to 15 kilometers thick, lies an ocean that may be 100 kilometers deep. The pressure at the bottom of that ocean would be similar to the pressure in Earth's Hadal trenches. And if there are hydrothermal vents on Europa's ocean floor, as many scientists suspect, then the conditions there might closely resemble the chemosynthetic ecosystems we have found in Earth's deep ocean. Could life exist in Europa's ocean? We cannot say for certain. But the Hadal zone shows us that life can thrive under such conditions. It shows us that darkness, pressure, and cold are not insurmountable obstacles. And it suggests that if life arose on Europa, it might still exist there now, in the deep, cold water beneath the ice. The same reasoning applies to Enceladus, to Titan's subsurface ocean, and potentially to other icy worlds throughout the solar system and beyond. Wherever there is liquid water, chemical energy, and time, life might find a way. This is one of the most profound contributions of deep ocean research. It has expanded our sense of where life can exist. It has shown us that habitable environments are not limited to places that resemble Earth's surface. And it has given us a template for searching for life elsewhere. Look for water, look for chemistry, and expect the unexpected. The Hadal zone is a humbling place. It is the farthest we can descend on Earth. It is a boundary between the known and the unknown. And it is a testament to life's persistence, its ability to find footholds in even the most extreme environments. Let us pause here, at the edge of the deepest places, and reflect quietly on what we have learned. The ocean is vast. It is ancient. And it holds lessons we are only beginning to understand. In the next part, we will explore the human history of deep-sea exploration, the technologies that have allowed us to reach these remote places, and the challenges that remain. Part 7. Explorers of the Abyss. For most of human history, the deep ocean was beyond our reach. We sailed across its surface, fished its shallows, and told stories about what might lie beneath. But we could not go there. We could not see. We could not know. The challenge was simple and absolute. Humans need air. We cannot breathe water. And even if we could, the pressure at depth would crush us. Our bodies are adapted for life at the surface, in air, at 1 atmosphere of pressure. Descend just 30 meters and the pressure doubles. Our lungs would compress. Our blood would absorb dangerous amounts of nitrogen. And beyond a certain depth, no amount of training or equipment could keep us alive. So for thousands of years, the deep ocean remained a mystery. Sailors reported strange creatures pulled up in nets. Divers using primitive equipment ventured down a few dozen meters and returned with stories. But the true deep, the abyssal realm, was as inaccessible as the surface of another planet. The first attempts to explore the deep ocean began in the 19th century. Scientists used dredges, heavy metal frames with nets attached, dragged along the seafloor behind ships. The dredges brought up sediment, rocks, and sometimes living creatures. It was crude, destructive, and haphazard. But it worked. It proved that life existed in the deep. The Challenger expedition, which we mentioned earlier, was one of the first systematic surveys of the deep ocean. From 1872 to 1876, the HMS Challenger sailed around the world, collecting samples from hundreds of locations. The scientists aboard dredged the seafloor, measured temperatures and currents, and catalogued thousands of new species. The data they gathered filled 50 volumes. It was a monumental effort, and it established oceanography as a scientific discipline. But dredging could only tell scientists so much. It brought back fragments, specimens, and dead animals. It could not show how these creatures lived, how they moved, or how they interacted with their environment. For that, humans needed to descend into the deep themselves. The first submersibles were simple diving bells, metal chambers lowered on cables. They allowed observers to descend a short distance while breathing air trapped inside the chamber. But the depth was limited. The pressure on the chamber increased rapidly, and there was no way to move horizontally once submerged. In the 1930s, 2 men changed this. William Beebe, an American naturalist, and Otis Barton, an engineer, designed a spherical steel chamber called a bathysphere. It was small, just over a meter in diameter, with thick walls and tiny quartz windows. It was lowered on a cable from a ship, with Beebe and Barton inside, breathing air from compressed tanks. In 1934, Beebe and Barton descended to a depth of 923 meters off the coast of Bermuda. It was a record at the time. Through the small windows, Beebe observed bioluminescent creatures, strange fish, and jellyfish drifting in the darkness. He described what he saw in vivid, poetic language. His accounts captivated the public and brought the deep ocean into popular imagination for the first time. But the bathysphere was dangerous. It depended entirely on the cable. If the cable broke, the sphere would sink to the bottom and the occupants would die. There was no way to ascend independently, and the sphere could not move horizontally. It was a passive observer, dangling in the water column. The next major advance came in the 1950s with the development of the bathyscaphe. Unlike the bathysphere, which hung from a cable, the bathyscaphe could descend and ascend under its own power. It used gasoline for buoyancy, since gasoline is lighter than water and relatively incompressible. Ballast weights allowed it to sink. Releasing the weights allowed it to rise. The most famous bathyscaphe was the Trieste, designed by Auguste Piccard and later used by his son Jacques and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh. In 1960, as we discussed, they descended to Challenger Deep, the deepest known point in the ocean. The dive took nearly 5 hours down and 3 hours back up. They spent only about 20 minutes at the bottom. But they proved it could be done. The Trieste was retired shortly after. It had achieved its goal. But it was slow, difficult to maneuver, and expensive to operate. 4 decades afterward, deep-sea exploration relied more on remotely operated vehicles than on human-occupied submersibles. ROVs are robotic systems connected to a surface ship by a tether that carries power and communication signals. They can be equipped with cameras, lights, manipulator arms, and scientific instruments. They can stay submerged for hours or even days. And if something goes wrong, no human lives are at risk. One of the most successful ROVs is Jason, operated by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Jason and its predecessor, Jason Jr., have explored hydrothermal vents, shipwrecks, and deep-sea ecosystems around the world. They have collected samples, recorded thousands of hours of video, and made discoveries that reshaped our understanding of the deep ocean. ROVs have limitations, though. The tether restricts their range. They cannot venture too far from the ship, and controlling them from the surface, with a delay caused by the length of the tether, requires skill and patience. Autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, solve some of these problems. AUVs are untethered. They navigate independently, following pre-programmed routes or using onboard sensors to avoid obstacles. They can map large areas of the seafloor, measure water properties, and even collect samples. When their mission is complete, they return to the surface and transmit their data. AUVs are becoming more sophisticated. Some can descend to full ocean depth. Others can operate under ice, exploring environments that are inaccessible to ships. And as battery technology improves, their endurance increases. They are becoming essential tools for ocean research. But there is something irreplaceable about human presence. Seeing with your own eyes, reacting in real time, and making decisions based on intuition and experience. For this reason, human-occupied submersibles remain important. Alvin, operated by Woods Hole, is perhaps the most famous deep-sea submersible. It has been in service since 1964, though it has been upgraded many times. Alvin can carry 3 people to depths of 6,500 meters. It has made more than 5,000 dives, discovering hydrothermal vents, exploring shipwrecks, and studying deep-sea ecosystems. Entire careers in marine biology have been built on data collected from Alvin. Other nations have developed their own deep-sea submersibles. China operates Jiaolong, capable of reaching 7,000 meters. Russia has Mir submersibles, which were used to explore the Titanic wreck. And Japan operates Shinkai, which has reached depths exceeding 6,500 meters. In recent years, there has been renewed interest in reaching full ocean depth. Several privately funded submersibles have been built, capable of descending to the deepest trenches. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo completed dives to the deepest points in all 5 oceans using a submersible called Limiting Factor. His expeditions discovered new species, collected samples, and, unfortunately, found plastic pollution at every site. These technological advances have transformed our ability to explore the deep ocean. But challenges remain. The ocean is vast. Building and operating deep-sea vehicles is expensive, and much of the ocean floor has never been seen by human eyes or cameras. Consider this. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of our own ocean floor. Satellites can measure the surface of Mars with extraordinary precision, but they cannot penetrate seawater. To map the ocean floor, we must send sonar-equipped ships or AUVs. And this is slow, expensive work. Current estimates suggest we have mapped only about 20% of the ocean floor at high resolution. The rest is known only from satellite measurements of the sea surface, which reveal large underwater features but miss smaller details. There are seamounts, canyons, and possibly entire ecosystems that we have not yet discovered, simply because we have not looked. Exploration also raises ethical questions. Every time we send a vehicle to the deep ocean, we disturb it. Light startle animals adapted to darkness. Manipulator arms damage fragile corals. Samplers remove organisms from their habitats. And the noise from ships and vehicles may affect deep-sea life in ways we do not yet understand. Some scientists argue for a cautious approach. They suggest that we should minimize our footprint, observe without disturbing, and preserve large areas of the deep ocean as protected reserves. Others argue that we must study the deep ocean to understand it, and that some disturbance is inevitable and justifiable if it leads to greater knowledge and better conservation. There is no easy answer, but there is growing recognition that the deep ocean deserves respect. It is not an empty frontier to be exploited. It is a living ecosystem, ancient and complex, that we are only beginning to understand. The history of deep-sea exploration is a story of human curiosity and ingenuity. It is a story of incremental progress, of small steps downward into an alien world. And it is a reminder that exploration requires humility. The ocean does not reveal its secrets easily. Let us pause here and consider how far we have come, and how much farther there is to go. Part 8. The Invisible Majority. We have spoken of fish and squid, of worms and crustaceans. These are the animals we can see, the ones that appear in photographs and videos. But they are not the majority of life in the deep ocean. Not even close. The true majority, in terms of both numbers and biomass, are invisible to the naked eye. They are microbes, bacteria and archaea, single-celled organisms too small to see without a microscope. And they are everywhere. In every drop of seawater, there are millions of microbes. They drift in the water column. They coat every surface. They live in sediments, in the guts of animals, and inside the cells of larger organisms as symbionts. They are the foundation of the deep ocean food web, and they drive the chemical cycles that make life possible. For a long time, scientists underestimated the importance of microbes in the ocean. They were difficult to study. Most could not be cultured in laboratories. They did not fit into the familiar categories of marine life. But advances in molecular biology, particularly DNA sequencing, have revealed just how diverse and essential they are. There are more species of bacteria and archaea in the ocean than there are species of all animals and plants combined. And most of them have never been formally described. They exist as genetic sequences in databases, identified by their DNA but not yet named or studied in detail. These microbes perform functions that no other organisms can. They fix nitrogen, converting nitrogen gas from the atmosphere into forms that other organisms can use. They decompose organic matter, breaking down dead plankton, feces, and other material into simpler compounds. They cycle sulfur, iron, and other elements essential for life. And some, as we have discussed, perform chemosynthesis, using chemical energy to produce organic matter. In the deep ocean, where sunlight does not reach, microbes are the primary producers in many ecosystems. At hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, chemosynthetic bacteria form the base of the food web. They are consumed by larger organisms, or they live in symbiosis with those organisms, providing them with nutrients. But microbes also play a critical role in the water column itself. Organic matter sinking from the surface is consumed by bacteria as it falls. This process, called remineralization, releases nutrients back into the water. It also respires carbon dioxide, returning carbon to the dissolved pool rather than sequestering it in the deep. The balance between carbon sequestration and remineralization affects Earth's climate. If more carbon sinks to the deep ocean and is buried in sediments, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels decrease. If more carbon is remineralized and returned to the surface, atmospheric levels increase. Microbes, through their metabolic activity, influence this balance. There is also a phenomenon called the microbial loop. In the surface ocean, tiny photosynthetic organisms called phytoplankton produce organic matter. Some of this is eaten by zooplankton, but much of it is released into the water as dissolved organic matter, molecules too small for most animals to consume. Bacteria absorb this dissolved organic matter and grow. And then other microbes, called protists, eat the bacteria. The protists are eaten by small animals, which are eaten by larger animals. In this way, energy and nutrients are cycled through the microbial community before entering the larger food web. This loop exists in the deep ocean as well, fueled by organic matter sinking from above or released by chemosynthesis. It is a hidden layer of complexity, a web of interactions that we are only beginning to map. One of the most surprising discoveries in recent years is the existence of a deep biosphere, a vast population of microbes living in sediments and rocks far beneath the seafloor. These microbes live in tiny pores and cracks, sustained by chemical reactions between rock and water. They metabolize incredibly slowly. Some may take thousands of years to reproduce. But they are alive, and they represent a significant fraction of Earth's total biomass. The deep biosphere extends kilometers below the seafloor. It may exist wherever there is water and chemical energy. And it raises questions about the definition of life. What does it mean to be alive if you reproduce once every 1,000 years? If you have no light, no oxygen, no connection to the surface world? These microbes challenge our assumptions about life's requirements. They also, once again, offer insights into the possibility of life elsewhere. Mars, for example, may have liquid water deep underground, in aquifers heated by geothermal activity. If microbes can thrive in Earth's deep biosphere, could similar life exist in Martian aquifers? We do not know. But the existence of Earth's deep biosphere suggests it is worth looking. Viruses, too, are abundant in the ocean. There are millions of viruses in every milliliter of seawater. They infect bacteria, archaea, and larger organisms. When a virus infects a cell, it hijacks the cell's machinery to produce more viruses. Eventually, the cell bursts, releasing the viruses and killing the host. This sounds destructive, and it is. But viral infections also play important ecological roles. They kill the fastest growing bacteria, preventing any single species from dominating. They release organic matter from cells, making nutrients available to other organisms. And they transfer genes between different species, facilitating horizontal gene transfer and driving microbial evolution. Viruses in the deep ocean are less studied than those in surface waters, but they are likely just as abundant and just as important. They are part of the hidden majority, shaping ecosystems in ways we are only beginning to appreciate. Microbial life in the deep ocean also includes extremophiles, organisms that thrive in conditions lethal to most other life. We have mentioned hyperthermophiles, bacteria that live in superheated water at hydrothermal vents. But there are also psychrophiles, organisms that thrive in cold water near freezing. There are barophiles, organisms that require high pressure to survive. And there are organisms that tolerate extreme acidity, extreme alkalinity, or high concentrations of heavy metals. These extremophiles have practical applications. Enzymes from thermophilic bacteria are used in molecular biology, including in the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, a technique fundamental to genetics research. Other enzymes from deep-sea microbes are being explored for industrial processes, biofuels, and pharmaceuticals. But beyond their practical uses, extremophiles expand our understanding of life's limits. They show us that life is not fragile. It is robust. It adapts. And it finds ways to exist in environments that seem, from our perspective, utterly inhospitable. The study of deep ocean microbes is still in its infancy. Most of what we know comes from DNA sequences extracted from water or sediment samples. We have identified thousands of microbial species genetically, but we have not seen them, cultured them, or studied their metabolism in detail. They remain largely mysterious. New technologies are helping. Automated samplers can collect water at specific depths and preserve it for analysis. Gene sequencing has become faster and cheaper, allowing researchers to catalog microbial diversity on a large scale. And techniques like metagenomics, which analyze all the DNA in a sample rather than isolating individual species, are revealing the functions and interactions of entire microbial communities. But there is still much to learn. We do not know how many microbial species exist in the ocean. We do not fully understand their metabolic pathways or their ecological roles. And we do not know how they will respond to changes in temperature, chemistry, or pressure as the ocean shifts in response to climate change. What we do know is this: microbes are the majority. They are the engine of the ocean's chemistry. They support all other life, directly or indirectly. And they connect the deep ocean to the surface, to the atmosphere, and to the entire Earth system. The invisible majority may not capture our imagination the way a giant squid or an anglerfish does. But they are, in many ways, more remarkable. They are life at its most fundamental. They are the quiet, tireless workers that make the ocean and the planet habitable. Let us rest here, in the presence of the invisible. Let the idea settle that life is not always grand or visible. Sometimes it is small, patient, and everywhere. In the next part, we will explore the sounds and signals of the deep ocean, the ways that life communicates and navigates in a world without light. Part 9. Signals in the dark. In the deep ocean, sight is limited. Bioluminescence provides brief flashes of light, but most of the time, most of the space is dark. So the creatures of the abyss rely on other senses. They listen, they feel, they taste the water, and they communicate in ways that do not require light. Sound travels well in water, much better than light. A sound produced in the deep ocean can travel for hundreds of kilometers before fading. And many deep-sea animals have evolved to use sound for communication, navigation, and hunting. Whales are perhaps the most obvious example. Though they spend time at the surface to breathe, many whale species dive deep to feed. Sperm whales, for instance, regularly dive to depths exceeding 1,000 meters. They hunt giant squid in the darkness, using sound to locate their prey. Sperm whales produce clicks, sharp pulses of sound that travel forward from their enormous heads. When the clicks hit an object, they bounce back as echoes. The whale listens to these echoes and constructs a mental image of its surroundings. This is called echolocation. It allows the whale to navigate, avoid obstacles, and find prey in complete darkness. The clicks produced by sperm whales are among the loudest sounds made by any animal. They can exceed 230 decibels, loud enough to be heard by other whales hundreds of kilometers away. The whales use these clicks not only for echolocation but also for communication. Different click patterns may convey different information, and whales within a social group often have distinct dialects, patterns of clicks that identify them as members of the same family or pod. Other toothed whales, including beaked whales and dolphins, also use echolocation. Beaked whales are particularly specialized for deep diving. Some species can dive to depths exceeding 3,000 meters and remain submerged for over 2 hours. They feed on squid and fish in the deep scattering layers, using echolocation to hunt in total darkness. But whales are not the only animals that produce sound in the deep ocean. Many fish also vocalize. They produce grunts, clicks, and hums by vibrating their swim bladders or grinding their teeth. These sounds may serve to attract mates, establish territories, or coordinate group behavior. The exact function of many fish sounds is still unclear. Researchers are only beginning to catalog the variety of sounds produced by deep-sea fish and to understand their meanings. But it is clear that sound is an important part of life in the deep, a way to communicate across distances that vision cannot span. Invertebrates, too, produce sounds. Snapping shrimp create loud pops by rapidly closing their claws, producing a cavitation bubble that collapses with a sharp crack. The sound is loud enough to stun small prey. And in shallow water, large populations of snapping shrimp create a constant crackling background noise. Whether similar sounds occur in the deep ocean is less well documented, but it is likely that many deep-sea crustaceans use sound in ways we have not yet observed. The ocean itself produces sound. Earthquakes generate low-frequency rumbles that propagate through the water. Underwater landslides create booms. Ice breaking and calving produces cracks and groans. Rain at the surface creates a pattering noise that can be heard below. And waves breaking on shores produce a constant murmur. All of these sounds form an acoustic landscape, a soundscape, that animals can use for orientation. A fish or whale far from shore might listen to the sound of breaking waves to determine the direction of the coast. It might listen to the sounds of a hydrothermal vent field to locate chemosynthetic communities. Sound provides information about the environment, even when nothing can be seen. Human activity has added new sounds to the ocean. Ships produce low-frequency noise from their engines and propellers. Sonar used for navigation and military purposes sends out loud pulses. Seismic surveys for oil and gas exploration use airguns that produce extremely loud, repetitive blasts. And underwater construction, drilling, and pile driving all create intense noise. This anthropogenic noise can interfere with the communication and navigation of marine animals. Whales, for instance, may have difficulty hearing each other over the noise of distant ships. Some species have shifted the frequency of their calls to avoid the noisiest bands of the spectrum. Others have increased the volume of their calls, essentially shouting to be heard. There is also evidence that intense noise can cause physical harm. Sonar and airgun blasts have been linked to strandings of beaked whales, which may suffer from decompression sickness if startled into surfacing too quickly from a deep dive. The long-term effects of chronic noise exposure on deep-sea animals are not well understood, but there is growing concern that we are filling the ocean with sound pollution in ways that disrupt life below. Beyond sound, many deep-sea animals rely on chemical signals. They release molecules into the water that can be detected by others of their species. These chemical cues might signal the presence of food, the readiness to mate, or a warning of danger. The sense of smell, or chemoreception, is highly developed in many deep-sea animals. Hagfish, for example, can detect the scent of dead or dying animals from great distances. They follow the chemical trail to the source, often arriving at a carcass within hours of its death. Sharks, too, have acute chemoreception, able to detect blood or other chemicals in concentrations of just a few parts per billion. Chemical signals do not travel as fast as sound, but they persist longer. A plume of chemicals drifting with the current can mark a trail for hours or even days. For an animal searching for food or a mate in the vast expanse of the deep ocean, following a chemical trail may be the most reliable strategy. Touch and vibration are also important senses. Many deep-sea fish have lateral lines, sensory organs that detect pressure changes and vibrations in the water. These allow the fish to sense the movement of nearby animals, even in complete darkness. A predator can detect the flutter of a prey's fins. Prey can sense the approach of a predator. Some fish have elongated fin rays or whisker-like barbels that extend from their bodies. These structures are covered with sensory cells. The fish holds them out into the current, feeling for anything that brushes against them. It is a tactile sense, extended into the water, a way of feeling the environment at a distance. Electroreception, the ability to detect electric fields, is rare in deep-sea animals but present in some species. Certain sharks and rays have organs called ampullae of Lorenzini, which detect the weak electric fields generated by the muscles and nerves of other animals. This allows them to find prey buried in sediment or hiding in the dark. Whether deep-sea fish use electroreception is less clear, but it would be a useful adaptation in an environment where other senses are limited. The deep ocean, then, is not silent or empty of information. It is filled with signals. Acoustic, chemical, tactile, and perhaps electrical. Animals navigate this landscape of signals with senses finely tuned to detect the faintest cues. And they communicate in a language we are only beginning to understand. There is something profound in this. The deep ocean teaches us that perception is not limited to sight. There are many ways to sense the world, many ways to communicate. And in the absence of light, life has found every possible alternative. Imagine drifting in the deep, listening. The distant song of a whale, rising and falling. The faint clicks of a hunting predator. The soft hum of the water itself, carrying echoes and whispers from places unseen. It is a world of sound and sensation, invisible but not silent. Let us pause here and listen, in our imagination, to the quiet symphony of the abyss. Part 10. The Deep and the Future. We have journeyed far together. We have descended through layers of water, each darker and colder than the last. We have met creatures strange and beautiful. We have explored geology, chemistry, and the limits of life. Now, as we near the end of our exploration, let us turn our attention to the future, to the challenges facing the deep ocean, and to what we might do to protect it. The deep ocean has always seemed remote, untouched by human activity. For most of history, it was. We fished the surface waters. We sailed the seas. But we did not reach the deep. It remained beyond our influence, a vast wilderness unchanged by human hands. That is no longer true. Our reach has extended downward. And the deep ocean, like every other part of the planet, is being affected by what we do at the surface. Climate change is perhaps the most pervasive threat. The ocean absorbs more than 90% of the excess heat trapped by greenhouse gases. This heat does not stay at the surface. It mixes slowly downward, warming the deep ocean. The warming is gradual, just a few hundredths of a degree per decade in some regions. But it is persistent. And it is changing the conditions that deep-sea life has adapted to over millions of years. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen. In regions where oxygen levels are already low, such as oxygen minimum zones, further warming expands these zones. Animals that cannot tolerate low oxygen are forced into smaller and smaller habitats. And species that depend on cold temperatures may find their ranges shrinking as the ocean warms. The deep ocean also absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This reduces atmospheric concentrations, which is beneficial for the climate. But it has a cost. When carbon dioxide dissolves in seawater, it forms carbonic acid, lowering the pH. This process, called ocean acidification, makes it harder for organisms to build shells and skeletons from calcium carbonate. In the deep ocean, where pressure is high, the water is naturally more acidic than at the surface. Some regions of the deep ocean are already close to the saturation point for calcium carbonate. If acidification continues, these regions could become corrosive, dissolving shells and skeletons rather than allowing them to form. This would affect deep-sea corals, mollusks, and countless other organisms that rely on calcium carbonate structures. The effects of acidification are slow and difficult to observe in the short term. But over decades and centuries, they could fundamentally alter deep ocean ecosystems. There is also the problem of pollution. We have already mentioned plastic. Plastic waste accumulates in the ocean, carried by currents and sinking through the water column. It reaches even the deepest trenches. Animals ingest it, sometimes mistaking it for food. Microplastics, tiny fragments smaller than 5 millimeters, are found throughout the ocean, in the water, in sediments, and in the tissues of marine animals. The long-term effects of microplastics on deep-sea life are not well understood, but there is evidence that they can cause physical harm, block digestive systems, and carry toxic chemicals. And because plastic degrades very slowly in the cold, dark, oxygen-poor environment of the deep ocean, it persists for centuries. Other pollutants also reach the deep ocean. Persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, are chemicals that do not break down easily. They include pesticides, industrial chemicals, and byproducts of combustion. These chemicals accumulate in the tissues of animals, becoming more concentrated as they move up the food chain. Deep-sea predators, such as sharks and large fish, can carry high concentrations of POPs, even in the most remote locations. Heavy metals, including mercury and lead, also accumulate in deep-sea organisms. Mercury is released into the atmosphere by coal burning and other industrial processes. It falls into the ocean, where bacteria convert it into methyl mercury, a form that is easily absorbed by animals. Methyl mercury accumulates in the tissues of fish and other marine life, reaching levels that can be toxic. The deep ocean has become, in some ways, a repository for the waste of human civilization. What we release into the air and water eventually finds its way into the abyss. And because the deep ocean is so slow to change, pollution persists there far longer than it would in more dynamic environments. Another emerging threat is deep-sea mining. As we discussed earlier, the deep ocean contains valuable mineral resources. Polymetallic nodules on the abyssal plains contain manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt. Hydrothermal vents deposit sulfides rich in copper, gold, and silver. And seamounts may have crusts rich in rare earth elements. As demand for these metals increases, driven by technologies like batteries, electronics, and renewable energy systems, interest in mining the deep ocean has grown. Several companies and governments have applied for exploration licenses in international waters, and some have begun testing mining equipment. But deep-sea mining would be profoundly destructive. Mining equipment would scrape or vacuum the seafloor, removing nodules and the organisms attached to them. It would create sediment plumes that drift for kilometers, smothering life far from the mining site. And it would destroy habitats that took millions of years to form. The organisms of the deep ocean grow slowly and reproduce infrequently. A coral colony destroyed by mining might take thousands of years to regrow, if it regrows at all. And because we know so little about deep-sea ecosystems, we cannot predict the full consequences of mining. We might destroy species before we even know they exist. There is also the question of whether deep-sea mining is necessary. Some argue that we should focus on recycling metals from existing products, improving efficiency, and developing alternative materials rather than extracting new resources from the deep ocean. Others argue that the demand for metals is so great that mining the deep ocean is inevitable, and that we should regulate it carefully to minimize harm. International discussions are ongoing. The International Seabed Authority, an organization established under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, is developing regulations for deep-sea mining in international waters. But the process is slow, and there is disagreement about how to balance economic interests with environmental protection. Some scientists and environmental groups are calling for a moratorium on deep-sea mining until we better understand the ecosystems at risk. They argue that we should not mine the deep ocean until we have thoroughly studied it, until we know what we might lose. Others argue that careful, limited mining could proceed with adequate safeguards. There are no easy answers, but the debate highlights a fundamental question. How do we value the deep ocean? Is it a resource to be exploited? Or is it a part of the planet's heritage, worthy of protection for its own sake? This question extends beyond mining. It applies to fishing as well. Deep-sea fisheries target species like orange ruffy and grenadiers, fish that live at depths exceeding 1,000 meters. These fish grow slowly and reproduce late in life, making them vulnerable to overfishing. Several deep-sea fish populations have collapsed due to overharvesting. And the methods used, particularly bottom trawling, destroy deep-sea habitats. There is growing recognition that deep-sea fisheries are often unsustainable. Some regions have banned bottom trawling. Others have established marine protected areas where fishing is prohibited. But enforcement is difficult, especially in international waters, and illegal fishing continues. The deep ocean also faces indirect threats from activities at the surface. Runoff from agriculture carries nutrients into the ocean, causing algal blooms that consume oxygen as they decay. This creates dead zones, regions where oxygen levels are too low for most animals to survive. While dead zones are most common in shallow coastal waters, they can extend into deeper regions, affecting continental slopes and deep-sea communities. So the challenges are many. Climate change, acidification, pollution, mining, overfishing, and habitat destruction. Each of these threats is serious. Together, they represent a cumulative pressure on ecosystems that are already slow to recover from disturbance. But there is also reason for hope. Awareness of the deep ocean's importance is growing. Marine protected areas are being established in some regions, preserving habitats and allowing ecosystems to recover. Technologies for monitoring the ocean are improving, allowing scientists to detect changes and assess the health of ecosystems more effectively. And international cooperation on ocean governance is strengthening, even if progress is slow. There is also growing interest in the deep ocean as a source of knowledge. The organisms there, particularly microbes and extremophiles, may hold clues to understanding life's origins, developing new medicines, and creating sustainable technologies. The deep ocean is not just a place to protect. It is a place to learn from. Perhaps most importantly, the deep ocean reminds us of our connection to the planet. The water that fills the abyss is the same water that falls as rain, that flows in rivers, that we drink and depend on. The carbon sequestered in the deep ocean affects the air we breathe. The biodiversity of the deep is part of the same web of life that includes us. We are not separate from the ocean. We are part of it. And what we do to the ocean, we ultimately do to ourselves. So the future of the deep ocean depends, in large part, on choices we make now. Do we treat it as a resource to be consumed? Or do we recognize it as a living system, ancient and complex, deserving of respect and care? The answer will shape not only the future of the deep ocean, but the future of the entire planet. Let us rest here, quietly, and consider what kind of future we want to create. In the next part, we will reflect on what the deep ocean teaches us, and we will bring our journey gently to a close. Part 11. Lessons from the Abyss. We have traveled together through the deepest places on Earth. We have witnessed bioluminescence flickering in the dark. We have explored hydrothermal vents where life thrives without sunlight. We have descended into trenches where the pressure would crush most living things. And we have listened to the whispers and signals that fill the seemingly silent deep. Now, as we prepare to ascend, let us reflect on what the deep ocean teaches us. What lessons can we carry back to the surface? What insights does the abyss offer about life, about resilience, and about our place in the world? The first lesson is about adaptation. Life in the deep ocean has faced challenges that seem insurmountable. No light, crushing pressure, near freezing temperatures, scarce food, isolation. And yet, life has not merely survived. It has flourished. It has found ways to extract energy from chemicals instead of sunlight. It has evolved proteins that remain stable under immense pressure. It has developed senses that work in complete darkness. This tells us something important about life itself. Life is not fragile. It is not limited to comfortable, Earth-like conditions. It is adaptive, creative, and persistent. Given time and the right conditions, life finds solutions to problems that seem impossible. This adaptability offers hope. It suggests that life, in some form, might exist in places we once thought uninhabitable. Not just on Earth, but beyond. The icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn. The subsurface of Mars. Perhaps even planets orbiting distant stars. Wherever there is liquid water, chemical energy, and time, life might find a foothold. The deep ocean has become a model for astrobiologists, scientists who study the possibility of life beyond Earth. The conditions at hydrothermal vents, darkness, high pressure, reliance on chemical rather than solar energy, closely resemble conditions that might exist on Europa or Enceladus. If life can thrive at Earth's hydrothermal vents, then similar life might exist in the oceans beneath the ice of these distant moons. This parallel is not merely speculative. It shapes how we plan missions to explore other worlds. Future spacecraft sent to Europa or Enceladus will carry instruments designed to detect signs of chemosynthetic life, life that uses the same basic chemistry as the bacteria at Earth's deep-sea vents. The deep ocean has given us a template, a set of expectations for what extraterrestrial life might look like. But the lesson extends beyond astrobiology. It applies to our understanding of Earth's own history. Life on Earth began more than 3.5 billion years ago, in an environment very different from today. The early Earth had no oxygen in its atmosphere. The surface was bombarded by asteroids. The sun was dimmer. Yet life arose and persisted. Some scientists believe that life may have originated at hydrothermal vents on the early seafloor, where chemical energy was abundant and where the environment was protected from the harsh conditions at the surface. If this is true, then the deep ocean is not just a habitat for life. It is the birthplace of life. And the chemosynthetic ecosystems we see today are echoes of the earliest living systems on Earth. This idea is still debated. There are other hypotheses for the origin of life, including shallow pools on land or subsurface aquifers. But the deep ocean remains a strong candidate. And studying modern deep-sea ecosystems helps us understand what the earliest life might have been like. The second lesson from the deep ocean is about interconnection. The deep ocean is not isolated. It is connected to the surface by the biological pump, by vertical migration, by currents, and by chemistry. What happens at the surface affects the deep. And what happens in the deep affects the surface. Carbon sequestered in the deep ocean influences atmospheric carbon dioxide levels and thus the global climate. Nutrients released in the deep are carried by currents to the surface, where they support photosynthesis and the growth of plankton. The ocean is a single, integrated system. And the deep, though remote, is a vital part of that system. This interconnection extends to human society. We depend on the ocean for food, for climate regulation, for oxygen production. We affect the ocean through our emissions, our waste, and our activities. We are not separate from the ocean. We are part of it. Recognizing this interconnection is essential for addressing the challenges facing the ocean. Climate change, pollution, and overfishing are not isolated problems. They are symptoms of a deeper disconnect, a failure to see ourselves as part of the natural world rather than apart from it. The deep ocean invites us to adopt a longer perspective. The creatures there live slowly. They grow over decades or centuries. They reproduce infrequently. The geological processes that shape the seafloor unfold over millions of years. And the currents that circulate through the deep take 1,000 years to complete a single cycle. This is a reminder that not everything happens quickly. Not everything can be solved immediately. Some processes require patience. Some systems require time to recover. And some decisions we make today will have consequences that unfold over generations. In a world that often prioritizes speed and immediate results, the deep ocean offers a different rhythm. It invites us to slow down, to think in longer timescales, to consider not just what we want now, but what we want for the future. The third lesson is about humility. The deep ocean is vast, and we have explored only a tiny fraction of it. We have visited a few hydrothermal vents out of thousands. We have mapped about 20% of the seafloor. We have identified thousands of deep-sea species, but there are likely millions more waiting to be discovered. Every expedition to the deep ocean reveals something unexpected. A new species. A new behavior. A new ecosystem. The ocean keeps reminding us that we do not know everything. That there are mysteries still to uncover. That the world is stranger and more wonderful than we imagine. This humility is not a weakness. It is a strength. It keeps us curious. It prevents us from assuming we have all the answers. And it reminds us to approach the natural world with respect and care. There is also a lesson about value. The deep ocean does not produce commodities that we can easily harvest or sell. It does not yield crops or timber. Its inhabitants are not typically food for humans. And yet, it is immensely valuable. It is valuable for the ecological services it provides, such as carbon sequestration and nutrient cycling. It is valuable as a reservoir of biodiversity, a library of genetic information that might someday lead to medical or technological breakthroughs. It is valuable as a place of scientific inquiry, where we can study life's limits and learn about our planet's history. And it is valuable, simply, for existing. For being a part of the planet's richness and complexity. For reminding us that there are places still wild and largely untouched by human hands. This intrinsic value is difficult to quantify. It does not appear in economic calculations. But it is real. And it is worth protecting. The deep ocean also teaches us about resilience. Life there has survived mass extinctions, ice ages, and dramatic shifts in ocean chemistry. It has persisted for billions of years. And while individual species may come and go, the deep ocean ecosystem as a whole has endured. But resilience has limits. The deep ocean is slow to recover from disturbance. A coral colony destroyed by trawling may take thousands of years to regrow. A species driven to extinction cannot return. And the cumulative pressures of climate change, pollution, and habitat destruction may push some ecosystems beyond their ability to recover. So resilience is not an excuse for carelessness. It is a reason to act thoughtfully, to protect what we can, to minimize harm, and to give the deep ocean, and the life it supports, the space and time it needs to persist. Finally, the deep ocean teaches us about wonder. It reminds us that the world is full of mysteries, that there are places we have not seen, creatures we have not met, processes we do not fully understand. This sense of wonder is precious. It is what drives exploration. It is what inspires curiosity. And it is what connects us to the natural world in a way that facts and data alone cannot. When we look at an image of a bioluminescent jellyfish drifting in the dark, or a hydrothermal vent wreathed in shimmering water, or a deep-sea fish with eyes like telescopes, we feel something. A sense of awe. A recognition that the world is larger and stranger than our everyday experience suggests. This feeling is not trivial. It is part of what makes us human. And it is something worth preserving, not just in ourselves, but for future generations. So the deep ocean offers many lessons. Adaptation, interconnection, humility, value, resilience, wonder. These are not just abstract concepts. They are invitations to think differently about our relationship with the planet, to see ourselves as part of a larger whole, to act with care and foresight. Let us carry these lessons with us as we rise slowly toward the surface, toward the light. Part 12. Returning to the light. We have reached the end of our journey. We have descended through the ocean's layers, from the sunlit surface to the deepest trenches. We have explored ecosystems sustained by chemistry rather than sunlight. We have met creatures adapted to extremes of pressure, cold, and darkness. And we have reflected on what these discoveries mean, not just for science, but for how we understand life and our place in the world. Now it is time to ascend, to return to the light. But we do not return unchanged. We carry with us images and ideas that linger. The soft glow of bioluminescence in the dark. The slow drift of marine snow. The ancient stillness of the abyssal plain. These are not just scientific facts. They are experiences, even if imagined, that shape how we see the world. As we rise through the water column, let us consider what it means to come back. To return to the surface with knowledge of what lies below. The surface of the ocean is bright and alive. Sunlight penetrates the water, illuminating plankton that drift in vast clouds. Fish school in the upper layers. Seabirds dive to catch prey. The surface is dynamic, constantly changing with the weather and the seasons. It is the part of the ocean we see, the part we interact with most directly. But beneath the surface lies everything we have explored. The twilight zone, where light fades. The midnight zone, where bioluminescence becomes the only illumination. The abyssal plains, vast and quiet. The trenches, narrow and deep. All of it is there, unseen but present. Knowing this changes how we look at the ocean. When we stand on a beach and watch the waves, we can imagine the water column extending downward, layer upon layer, until it reaches the seafloor thousands of meters below. We can imagine the creatures drifting in the dark, the microbes cycling nutrients, the currents flowing slowly through the abyss. This knowledge does not diminish the beauty of the surface. It deepens it. It adds layers of meaning. The ocean is not just a surface. It is a volume, a three-dimensional space filled with life and mystery. And this knowledge carries responsibility. We now know that the deep ocean is not untouchable. It is affected by what we do. Our emissions warm the water and acidify it. Our waste drifts downward and accumulates. Our activities, from fishing to mining, reach into the deep and alter it. We cannot claim ignorance. We cannot say we did not know. The science is clear. The deep ocean is changing. And if we do nothing, those changes will continue, with consequences we cannot fully predict. But knowledge also offers hope, because if we understand the threats facing the deep ocean, we can address them. We can reduce emissions. We can limit pollution. We can protect habitats. We can manage fisheries sustainably. We can decide not to mine the deep seafloor, or to proceed only with extreme caution and strict regulations. These choices are not easy. They require balancing competing interests. They require international cooperation. And they require a willingness to prioritize long-term health over short-term gain. But they are possible. And they are necessary. The deep ocean has survived for billions of years. It has weathered ice ages and warm periods, asteroid impacts, and volcanic eruptions. It is resilient. But it is not invulnerable. And the pace of change we are causing is faster than anything the deep ocean has experienced in millions of years. So we have a choice. We can continue on our current path, extracting resources, emitting carbon, and hoping that the ocean will absorb the consequences. Or we can change course. We can recognize the ocean as a living system that requires care. We can act with humility and foresight. This is not a message of doom. It is a message of possibility. We have the knowledge. We have the tools. And we have the capacity to make better choices. The deep ocean also offers inspiration. It shows us what is possible when life is given time and space. It shows us that even in the harshest conditions, beauty and complexity can emerge. And it reminds us that exploration is not finished. There is still so much to discover, so much to learn. Future generations will explore the deep ocean in ways we cannot yet imagine. They will use technologies more advanced than ours. They will ask questions we have not thought to ask. And they will, perhaps, find answers that change how we understand life, Earth, and our place in the universe. But that future depends on what we do now. If we destroy the deep ocean, if we strip it of its biodiversity and fill it with waste, then future generations will inherit a diminished world. They will explore ruins rather than living ecosystems. If, instead, we protect the deep ocean, if we allow it to remain wild and complex, then future generations will inherit a world full of wonder. They will have the chance to make their own discoveries, to feel their own awe, to learn their own lessons from the abyss. This is our gift to give or withhold. This is our choice. As we rise through the final meters of water and break the surface, we are greeted by light. The sun, warm and bright. The sky, open and vast. The air, fresh and breathable. The surface world is welcoming. It is home. But we do not forget what lies beneath. The deep ocean is always there, supporting the life we see, regulating the climate we depend on, holding mysteries we have yet to uncover. It is part of the same world, part of the same system, part of the same planet we all share. So let us carry the deep ocean with us, in our awareness, in our choices, in our sense of wonder and responsibility. Let us remember that the ocean is not just a resource. It is a living, breathing part of the earth. And it deserves our respect. The journey we have taken together has been imaginary, a descent through words and ideas. But the deep ocean itself is real. It exists, right now, in all its strangeness and beauty. And it invites us, not just to explore it, but to protect it. As you drift towards sleep, let the images settle gently in your mind. Bioluminescent flashes in the dark. hydrothermal vents wreathed in shimmering water, giant squid gliding silently through the midnight zone, microbes cycling nutrients in sediments far below, whales singing across vast distances. The slow, patient life of the abyss. These images are gifts from a world we rarely see. They are reminders that the planet is larger and more complex than our everyday lives suggest. And they are invitations to wonder, to care, and to act. The deep ocean has much to teach us. It has taught us about adaptation and resilience, about interconnection and value, about humility and wonder. And it has shown us that life, in all its forms, is remarkable, precious, worth protecting. So rest now. Let the calm of the deep ocean wash over you. Let the darkness be a comfort rather than a fear. And let the knowledge that life persists, even in the most extreme places, be a source of hope. The ocean will still be there when you wake. Vast and deep, ancient and alive, waiting quietly for the next explorer, the next question, the next discovery. And perhaps, in some small way, we will all be better stewards of this remarkable world, this blue planet, this home. Deep sleep, deep dreams.